The only thing we have to
Beer.
is
Beer.
itself.
Beer. So many choices.
Only no function beer well without.
Woohoo! Beer! Hello, and welcome to another episode of Beer Busters, where we're going to bring you the news and reviews of some wonderful brews. My name is Dan Baker, joined as usual by my co-host and brewologist,
Steph Hefner.
and of course the demented and fermented
Wayne Baker.
Speaking of fermentation, we have made it back to somewhere we've been before. We've had the proprietor of this business on many times. But we're back in Royersford, Pennsylvania. That can mean we are only at Stickman Brews, and that means we have two folks at the table with us. One you've heard many, many times, but we have a new friend with us.
Hi, I'm Kate.
Kate, thank you for coming up to the show with us. And of course,
Ethan Buckman.
Ethan, the man himself, Buckman. Guys, thank you for having us out here.
Thanks for coming.
It feels like we were just here.
Pretty
I know,
much,
right?
yeah.
We're like in the same spot and everything.
Yeah, it's a little more crowded this time. Where
there's
we
a lot
are.
more shit back
Yeah,
there.
which I'm sure
Which is a good thing.
Yeah,
It is.
which I'm sure we'll talk about. It's a festive night. There's a food truck outside, like seems like there always is. There's live music playing, beers are flowing. It's shaping up to be a pretty cool night.
Hold on. Breaking news.
Oh,
Breaking news.
Dan is now in his 30s.
Oh God,
Dan is 30.
Woo!
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Dan.
Thank you.
It's
Fucking
the first
millennial.
recording in your 30s.
The Evil Genius was the last of my 20s, and here this is the first of my 30s.
Do you have to do anything to prevent the onset of dementia?
It's already happened. Drink more beer. Drink more beer.
Drink
Yeah.
more beer. Drink more beer.
Yeah,
Do
exactly.
you get hungover yet?
Oh, I've been for years.
Oh, okay. Because it started for me once I turned 30. That's when my hangover started.
Oh God, no! I've been getting hungover for years, years and years and years.
You haven't been drinking enough. You weren't drinking
That's
enough
what
when you were
everybody
20.
says.
It's pretty accurate though. If you only got hungover when you were 30.
No.
Well.
I'll provide evidence later. But continue the show.
And on with the show. Well, before we do continue with the rest of the show, we have to thank Audible for their continuing support. Remember, you can go to audibletrial.com/beerbusters. Sign up for that coveted free 30-day trial of your very own personal, it's yours, nobody else's Audible account, where you can peruse the library, download, and listen to your own book. There's something like 300,000 books that are available on there, so whatever you want to read, chances are there's an audiobook version of it. And if worst thing that's going to happen if you don't keep that membership is you still have a free book out of the deal. You can go back and listen to it as many times as you want, just like your favorite albums. Listen to your favorite books again. audibletrial.com/beerbusters.
Yes. You know where else you can go on the internet, Dan?
There's a lot of places.
There's a lot of places. You know where you should go?
Where?
You should go to patreon.com/beerbusters. Sign up to become a patron of the podcast.
It's a good idea.
Help support the show. Keep the lights on at Beer Busters headquarters. And you get cool behind-the-scenes perks when you sign up to become a patron for as little as $1 a month. And we started a new perk.
Yes, we did.
A sort of secret podcast that we're releasing only to our patrons. They already get our podcast outtakes if you're a patron. But now we're calling it Beer Busters Last Call, which is a name Dan came up with.
So it's the drunkest of the
Really.
segments.
So what we're doing is
Pretty
we're
much.
doing an extra segment at the end of every podcast recording. After we've drank all night, after we've closed the official episode, we're going to do another like 10, 15 minutes where we taste another secret beer or do whatever. And we're going to post that only for our patrons. So if you want more Beer Busters in your life, and why wouldn't you, go to patreon.com/beerbusters and find out how you can sign up to support the podcast.
Yeah. Well, normally we would do the news right here. I'll admit I don't have any news stories because this is going to publish, I believe, 5 weeks after we're done recording it, so all the news would have been long gone out of everybody's minds. So I guess that means we can just get into some of the topics that are at hand, or some of the heated thoughts that one or all of us may have about certain things.
I think, yeah,
Should we
Ethan-
do a little bit of an interview first before we let him get on his soapbox?
I think
we
we
don't
have
want
to
people
do
to
that
turn
first.
it off like
Yeah.
right away.
Well, let's have a little teaser. Ethan has some things he wants to get off his chest.
I have some things that I need to say, and this is the appropriate venue to say
It is the
them.
appropriate venue. But before we get into that,
Before we get into that,
how have things been at Stickman since we were last here?
Phenomenal.
Nice.
Yeah, we have been, distribution has been really kicking up. We have one of our big things that is kind of a little cool packaging thing is we've switched to disposable kegs, which is wonderful. They're recyclable. They're a smaller medium, and it's allowing us to spread our beer out a little further. And so as a result, we've been spreading our beer out further. We are now on tap everywhere between Lancaster and Philadelphia and up into the Lehigh Valley.
Yes, I have noticed that. Your beer is on everywhere, and I love it.
And I'm super excited about it. And we're managing to do it with only 2 guys actually physically brewing and an awesome air mattress. So it's been.
Well, there was an air mattress malfunction, wasn't there?
Yeah,
at one point?
The last time I actually had to sleep in the brewery was a while ago, and I don't know. I've just been getting a little heavier. I laid down on the air mattress and it popped. I woke up in the middle of the night just on like a flat piece of plastic.
Oh my gosh!
Wow.
So that happened. But yeah, so we've really been expanding distribution. You guys will. I think you already mentioned we have a bunch of new tanks in here.
Yeah.
We are not just open fermenting beer anymore. That'll feed into my rant if you give me a second. We are not just open fermenting beer anymore. We do have the more conventional conicals in here now. We're planning on adding even more, bottling equipment and packaging equipment and more conical fermenters.
Okay, hold on. I have some follow-up questions here. First of all, talk a little bit more about these disposable kegs.
Oh, they're great.
They're what size? How big are they?
We're doing quarter kegs.
Okay.
Pretty much for everything. Disposables come in quarters or sixtels. We're sticking just with quarters. And so it's great because, our customers can try more than one beer. They're not committing to a half. Sometimes they're taking 2 quarters in lieu of a half, and they love them because we don't have to worry about deposits. We're not clogging up, picking up. We don't have walk-ins full of kegs. We don't have to worry about getting our kegs back. And they just go in the recyclable. So
what's the material?
It's made out of a high pressure tested food grade plastic. So in all functionality.
Do you have any sitting around?
Yeah, there's some on that big pallet over there. I could go grab one.
I'll have to go
look. But if they're pressure rated, they essentially function in every way the same as steel. They're tinted a certain shade of brown that is slightly different than you'll notice brown bottles are. They've been lab tested and UV tested to guarantee like the right shade, so light striking isn't an issue with hoppy beers or anything like that, and in every way they function like stainless steel. They come fully pressurized and sanitized, which is great.
Oh, so you don't even have to prep
clean
them
or anything.
No.
So the other brewer here, my young man Brendan, who is phenomenal. We stole him from Manayunk, and we're not giving him back. Brendan loves them because he doesn't have to clean kegs anymore.
Sorry, Evan.
But yeah, so they're that's been like our biggest, I guess, like out in the world tangible innovation is these disposable kegs, because we've been able to get more beer to more people, especially with store-bought is fine IPA. But with a lot of our brands, especially the hoppy beers, things were selling out very quickly because we're only a 10-barrel brewery. We only had enough beer physically in half barrels or even sometimes in sixtels because of the amount that people wanted to give 5-6 locations the beer. It sucked for us because not enough people saw our beer. It sucked for our great customers because they had to they knew when our sales reps emails came out and they had to wait at their computer for the email so they could click the buy button or the reserve button because our beers were selling out in an hour, which I guess is a good problem to have. So we switched to these disposable kegs, and now they still sell out in an hour, but more people get them. So it's very good.
Now, are you self-distributing?
Yes, we have an awesome van. Our other partner,
we saw in the parking lot,
and our other partner, Jim, put in this awesome crane lift in the back of the van, so people don't have to hurt their backs getting kegs in and out and stuff like that.
So is he the one that's going and distributing all the kegs, or you guys share that workload?
We have a delivery driver and 2 sales reps now.
No,
kind of do
amazing.
All the distribution work. Yeah. So we have, since the last time we've talked, we now have 12 employees on the payroll.
Wow.
And we have is it 11 or 12? 12, yeah, 12, and we have 12 employees on the payroll now, and we have been 2 sales reps plus Kyle delivers and also does the sales repping for what we call the far away areas. So Reading, Allentown, Lancaster, he's the guy out there as well.
Far away places.
Yeah.
I love that. All right, so now talk about these conicals over here. There's a lot more. This has obviously increased your ability to brew as well, your capacity here.
So there's the very obvious, there's just physically more vessels to hold beer. They do make beer quicker. Having a little bit of pressure as opposed to the open tops makes fermentation happen quicker. And also being able to cool the beer quicker and get sediment out of it quicker makes it quicker to package. We hit a point where the speed that we were able to make beer was just not quick enough. So we added these, and we're at a point now we're brewing and packaging about 40 barrels of beer a week. That just wasn't physically possible with the old system. And it's rapidly increasing. Even over the summer, which is supposed to be a slow season, we're noticing like a strong increase. So,
is summer typically a slow season?
yeah, for this
People
area,
travel.
it is.
Oh, for this area, okay.
Takeout goes up, but overall sales go down as people don't come into bars. They travel, they have house parties,
yeah, that
stuff
makes
like
sense.
that.
They're
So you do
drinking
have that
away.
nice little outdoor seating area now by the food truck, which is
We-
really cool.
Yeah, we do. We love the outdoors. We're hoping to expand that a little bit at some point as well. But
Okay, so you mentioned this, and I have to give you shit for this. You mentioned store-bought is fine. And I will never forget the very first time we talked to you, you were like, I will never brew an IPA.
Uh-oh.
Well,
are we
Steph-
getting? Wait. Are we getting to the rant now? Is that where we're at?
here's
This
the,
is
It's a good
Steph's
segue.
rant.
here's the thing.
Are you
Here's
pleasing the masses? Have
the
you given
thing.
in? Have you sold out?
Imagine if you
Consider
would
if you will.
Imagine all
that
the
you
people.
are a classically trained chef, and you move into a new town, and you open a really awesome French restaurant,
And no
you
one
have
appreciates it.
and you have a great concept for your French restaurant, and everybody comes in and they say, "Do you have pepperoni pizza?" And you say, "No, we are a French restaurant. However, we do have these pork products that you will likely enjoy if you like pepperoni pizza." "No, I only want pepperoni pizza." And then you get so tired
Guys,
of that.
pepperoni pizza's IPA.
I was going to say, I think
Okay.
it's a metaphor for IPAs.
And then you say, okay, these guys want pepperoni pizza, so I will make pepperoni pizza my way, because I am a classically trained chef who has a vision. And so you
And
make,
who is French? Is that important in this analogy?
well, I mean, French, saisons, farmhouse
Okay,
beers.
fair
But-
enough.
So then you make your French pizza, your French pepperoni pizza, and everybody comes and they says,
Your spontaneously fermented French pizza.
your open fermented French pizza. And they say, this pizza is a pizza, but it doesn't taste exactly the same as the other pizzas that I've had. So I don't like your pizza. So then you say, okay, I will make a classic pepperoni pizza, but I will buy the freshest ingredients and use really unique, locally sourced ingredients for my pepperoni pizza. And everybody says, oh, this does not taste exactly the same as every pepperoni pizza I've ever had, so therefore I hate it. And then you make the pepperoni pizza and everybody wants it delivered. So you come up with a beautiful box for the pepperoni pizza, and they say, this is not the exact same box that my pepperoni pizza comes in. I hate it. That's where we're at with store-bought is fine.
Well,
So-
it's a delicious beer.
Thank you. So we're going to taste it on this show, I believe.
Yay.
So I'm very happy with that beer. We've still managed to kind of give our touch to it. What's really funny about this beer now, to further my little annoyance with beer nerds lately, and I just need to say it, and I say it all the time, so I don't feel comfortable saying it on the podcast. We use a clean yeast in that beer now. We use an American ale yeast. And people taste it and they say things like, "Oh, it's got that classic Stickman funk to it." No, it doesn't. It's not open fermented.
It actually
and
does not.
It does not. It is, you guys broke us. We brew the same kind of IPA that you get everywhere else.
So-
and I'm glad you like ours, but it's now funny that you hated us for having funky beers, and now we brewed the beer
Yeah.
that you wanted, and you say it's funky, and you like it because it's funky.
So is this a compromise made in order to still be able to make those other beers that you started wanting to make in the first place? Is that where
That's what
coming
Kate. That's what Kate often reminds me of. Yeah.
So there it is right there. That's the compromise.
Well, no. So I'll back up a little bit. The Conicals are not just a compromise. All right. So part of it is we wanted to make beer quicker. Store-bought is fine as a compromise. All right. Shameless pandering. That beer is a compromise. The Conicals, though, also allow us to now have
Not very subtle with the names. I mean,
right.
Just think about it for a second.
But the Conicals also allow us to now have our lager program. Now I know you guys. I've talked to you guys about where I used to work. I was trained classically in brewing by German brewers in like a German apprenticeship style. So we've taken a lager program, and we're going to taste one of the lagers here too, and taken the same approach that we have to American farmhouse brewing and brought it to lager beers. So taking the American idea of recipe formulation and then taking a step back and using the old school production methods and techniques and all of that to make the beers. So part of the Conicals with the temperature control now allows us to take that brewing approach to a whole nother set of styles that people will just complain don't have enough hops in them.
It probably will, but
Yeah.
so I'm actually curious. Like, do you?
By the way, I'm drinking the freaking cream ale, the complete opposite of hops, and it's killer. It's
I'm
delicious.
glad you like
So,
it. Thank you.
It's good,
um,
and it pairs well with cupcakes.
do you think you would have had this problem at a different time or in a different place?
This is very unique to right now.
Okay,
So
because
when
I kind of feel like this, yeah.
When I got my first brewing job, I worked at the Church Brew Works. Church Brew Works, the best-selling beer at the Church Brew Works was the Dunkel Lager. Every brewery in Pittsburgh's best-selling flagship beer was a different style of beer. Every brewery in Pittsburgh had a different brand and a different packaging. People purchased their beer differently. People expected the experience and the beers at these places to be different. And then in Philly, it was true. Even 4 years ago when I moved to Oklahoma, as underdeveloped as that brew scene was, it was true there. Even 2 years ago, when I finished working at Free Will to start opening this place, it was like that.
Yeah.
Free Will's best-selling beers were different than the Chamonix Creeks, were different than Tire Hands, were different than Forest
And that
Lanes.
was one of the things that was the coolest about the craft beer world.
Yes.
You
And-
went to different breweries for different reasons to have different beers.
Now, do you
And-
think that that's a result? I'm sure you have thoughts about what that's a result of.
So I'll tell you exactly what I think it's a result of. There's a couple of things.
Right.
I think there's a combination. The spark of it is I think that there is kind of a lack of self-awareness in the beer drinking community, which is my big rant, which is what I really hate. You don't have to be an expert to like things. I love to eat. I'm a large fella, and I'm a great cook at home, but I do not in any way, and I'm even on like Facebook groups about like cooking techniques and new restaurants in Philly and things like that, and that doesn't mean that I know anything about cooking beer or cooking food. It actually doesn't even mean that I know that much about tasting food outside of what I like.
Right.
But for some reason, in the last 2 or 3 years, a certain set of breweries that make a certain type of IPA have felt as a way they need to sell their beer, they have entered into the marketplace this idea that you need to be a beer expert in order to be a good beer consumer,
Right.
and that those two things are synonymous. And as a result, what you have is a bunch of people who are now new to craft beer who are immediately being told, oh, you like this really accessible, not super complicated or complex style, you must be an expert. And so now what you have is the equivalent of a bunch of people who only eat chicken fingers calling themselves gourmands. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I don't. If all you like is IPAs, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. What I think a lot of brewers are fed up with is the lack of self-awareness about it.
Right.
When you see people like attack new breweries. Last time I was on this podcast, I was talking about Neshaminy Creek and how ridiculous, I was talking about it then, how ridiculous I thought it was that this perfectly well-balanced IPA was being lambasted in the beer geek community for not being exactly the same as all the other IPAs they're drinking right now. And the way they're talking about it, the terms they're using to talk about it are these like really like they picked up this brewing term and they picked up that brewing term, but they're totally wrong. When you look at these forums and they talk about
Sort of like we've hit like critical hipster mass.
yes,
Yeah.
because everybody knows that. Like, so when you go out to a bar now, this is I think a good thing in a way. If your one friend, your one like meathead friend orders a Bud Light, everybody else makes fun of them.
Yeah.
So now everybody knows that it's not really appropriate to order a macro beer in certain areas or communities. So then what they do is they order the IPA.
They order,
And they order it by the look.
Or the
because
Blue
that's,
Moon.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And then you get made fun of for the Blue Moon, but so they order the IPA.
I mean, there's a sort of like tier.
Yeah, exactly.
There's layers, yeah.
But they're still ordering the beer by look, right? It's just a different look.
Yeah.
And they're tasting it, and just like with a macro beer, as long as it tastes the exact same, right? People like Coors and Miller and PBR and Bud Light because no matter which one's on special, they all taste the same.
Yeah.
And that is the reason the name is store-bought is fine, right? The reason we make fun of this all the time, even in our branding overtly, is that it's all the same. It's all becoming the same. People are demanding it is the same, and they're making fun of people or insulting people or bemoaning people's products if it's not exactly the same, but then simultaneously getting upset if you sell out or do anything that seems to be ripping somebody else off. We had a moment where we released a beer called Smoothie Gimmick Beer, which was clearly a name making fun of not necessarily another brewery in the area, but a trend that 3 or 4 local breweries are now participating in.
I was
going to
ask your feelings on this trend.
Sweetened novelty products sold as high-end complex beer.
Sure.
I don't like it.
Especially with certain things that may or may not be added into them that should not typically be found in beer.
So, okay, I think I know what you're getting at, and we'll go on this diversion a little bit. Cloudy beer is cloudy for several reasons. None of them have to do with lack of filtration, freshness, or amount of hops in beer. Sometimes it has to do with the additives of like pectin or flour. Sometimes it has to do with changes in the brew process. We do not add pectin or flour to our beer. We will change the brew process drastically when we brew IPAs to get them to stay cloudy. It's not because we used a bunch of oats in it, because oats are a cereal grain, just like wheat, just like barley. They have certain levels of protein and certain levels of starch, and that protein and starch is converted into sugar or soluble in liquid depending on how you brew with it. So it has nothing to do with the ingredients. It's all about the process. Which would beg the question, if somebody has to lie to you about what they're doing to their product in order to get you to like it, maybe that should make you question what's going on with that product.
And how did this happen, though? How did the consumer demand that they're drinking?
Well,
I mean, last night I had literally an opaque double IPA.
Yeah.
Now, and I don't know what the process or what the ingredient was and how it became that. I don't know. I'm not familiar with this particular breweries, how they do that. But if I would have picked this up, like even just a few years ago, as someone that is knowledgeable in beer and how to make beer commercially, I would have been like, what the fuck went wrong here, you know?
Yeah.
And now you pick it up, and I mean, if the IPA was like this, perfectly clear, they wouldn't want to drink it.
Right, and people will see that perfectly clear beer and start talking about how all our beer is filtered. We don't own a filter here.
All beer will eventually look like this. It's called conditioning.
Right, exactly. And so what happened is a twofold thing, right? So you kind of start with a bunch of guys who are doing something really cool. Maine Brewing and Alchemist were releasing these Vermont or New England style IPAs. Vermont IPAs are a little bit different than New England IPAs in like a real brewer, like real wonky brewery distinction. But for consumer purposes, it's like stout and porter. You can't taste the difference. You're only going to notice the difference in a recipe formulation or a process thing. But they're very, very similar styles of beer. The Alchemist was doing it. Maine Brewing Company was doing it. And they were doing it very early. Some people say that even like some of Allagash's hoppier Belgian stuff was touching on this idea a while ago. I never had any of their taproom stuff, so I don't know. But these beers got really popular. Along the same time that these beers got really popular, which is about 5 or 6 years ago, you start seeing this trend in rare beer where people are putting more pressure on how hard it is to get the beer than they are how the beer actually tastes or if they like it, right? So you see these kind of coalesce, and then you see this third aspect of craft beer is not a niche product. All of a sudden, it's the mainstream product, so everybody needs to drink craft beer. Well, if everybody needs to drink craft beer, and everybody needs to be a beer expert, and everybody needs to drink rare beer, but everybody needs to drink something that's accessible because they don't all have a developed palate or an acquired taste for more complex flavors, there's nothing wrong with that, but again, self-awareness, right? So then you have these Vermont and New England style IPAs, which are, despite the beer geeks insistent, actually some of the less complex beers that exist. They're highly sweetened. They all have like three.
One note.
Yeah, they all have like 2 or 3 notes. None of like the notes that are challenging to people are deeper malt characters. That's an acquired taste. Bitterness is an acquired taste. A lot of yeast character is an acquired taste. Sour is an acquired taste. Sweetness is not. And hints of fruits that are also sweet are not acquired taste. So when you have beers that just read, it's not a top note, it just is the note. Citrus fruit or stone fruit plus sweetness, it's really accessible, right? So you had one style of beer that was both rare and accessible. So everybody started clamoring for it. And so what you see a lot of is guys that are relatively new to beer, in the sense that, like, good beer, craft beer has existed in the U.S. since the 70s, right? So if you're a guy that just started getting really serious about collecting beer and drinking beer, and I don't mean like preferring to order a higher level beer at the bar, I mean like being very serious about thinking what you're drinking. In the last 3 or 4 years, you probably are exposed majority to IPAs because it's a self-repeating cycle. They are the most. So then the rarest IPAs are also the least challenging, most easily accessible IPAs that there are, and so now that's all you drink because there's a glut of them. Because even though there's this false conception, they're not rare if you can stand in a line to get one 3 days a week, every week, everywhere that you live. They are all brewed the same. They all taste the same. And if you can name breweries, which we all can off the top of our heads, that have a can release that coalesces on a calendar in a 20-mile radius, that you can get a release of these cans or bottles of this type of beer 3 times a week. Plus, Maine Brewing Company, the originator of this style, is shipping beer to the city you live in. It's not rare, but it's become the cool thing, and it's become the rare thing because you have to wait to get it. You can't just pick it up off the shelf. And so, like, all of this is kind of coalesced to a very vocal group of people that is insisting that every brewery do the exact same thing, which further down the line makes it a lot easier for these big companies to then buy the small companies that all the beer geeks then...
Because they're already making what's really popular, and they're all making similar things.
And then all the beer geeks get super pissed off that their company sold out, the one they really liked. But if you would be willing to drink anything except one style packaged one exact way, it'd be a lot harder for a macro company to come in, identify exactly what's going on in the market, and know how to manipulate your customer base, right? So my big problem is, like, the beer industry, the beer consumer industry used to be celebrating creativity and used to be celebrating thoughtful things and tasting things. And now it's celebrating, I don't know the word, like ostentacity. Just like a rareness, like that is just like to tell other people you have it. A pretentiousness, and honestly being the same, and that's what you get rewarded for in this market. So we do it too because we want to be rewarded in the market too, and we find it shocking that we can actively make fun of this trend with the beer
and sell it to those people,
and they'll buy it. Have you seen the labels for Shameless Mandering?
I have not.
Have you seen the text that's on the labels? I'll grab it in a second because we do this and we sell this to these people and they go nuts about it, and then they go wait in the next line for the next beer.
Now, do you think that if this demand for IPAs and this single thought process, do you think this could be the detriment of the craft beer community?
I think it's
something that was built on diversity and breaking away from one style that was dominating U.S. beer.
I think it's a tremendous detriment to the craft beer community. I think it's on a real anecdotal level. It sucks, man. Like I said, it's the equivalent of only eating chicken fingers and convincing yourself that you're a foodie. But so it's detrimental to the consumer for that reason, which is a big fabric of like this craft beer thing we talk about. It's also incredibly detrimental to the business for a couple of reasons. One is like real detriment. You're not helping breweries by not supporting their core brands. You're not, if you care about supporting your local brewer and you care about local business, only showing up when these guys have a release that is packaged exactly to the trend with the exact trend beer into it is not actually helping them. It's just creating a situation where the breweries have to live paycheck to paycheck for your support. Furthermore, in a more anecdotal way, it's kind of negative to the craft brewer community. You guys ever read the book A River Runs Through It? So there's a quote from the father in the book.
Wait, I thought that was a movie.
It is a movie and a book.
Oh, there was a book too?
Yes, it's in both. There's a quote from the father. He says, "If I had it my way, nobody who didn't know how to catch a fish would ever be able to disrespect a fish by catching it." Right? And so New England IPA is the easiest style of beer to brew. And I mean, I'll really break it down for you. You have no malt character. There's no conditioning technique whatsoever. You boil the beer for an incredibly short amount of time, overload it with oats, dump so many hops into it that you can't taste off fermentation flavors even if they're there, and then convince everybody that it has to be drank in 2 weeks so you wouldn't even notice if it was infected. So it is like literally the most, and it's brilliant in a way. You've created a marketing campaign where everything that you could do wrong in the brew process is now all of a sudden the consumer's fault. But what's happening is you're then allowing a bunch of people who don't know how to make beer or run breweries enter the market, and you'll hype them up.
An already crowded market.
Right. And then you'll hype them up. You'll give them thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars for the exact same beer everybody else is making. And then these guys will flame out. They won't, it's not a sustainable model. Fads are not a sustainable way to run a business. But what's happening is you're allowing this, you're basically allowing, I don't think it's a bubble, because a bubble is a very different thing, but you're kind of allowing this like market saturation and trend setting to take over the beer market. And so you're doing two things. You're making it harder for skilled and trained brewers to develop a craft and a brand their own, and you're also...
And a portfolio of diverse beers.
Exactly. And you're also making it really, 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 really hard on guys who should be running small companies and learning their trade and developing their brand because they got into it maybe without the appropriate knowledge, because they were a home brewer and were really into it and had the ability to open the business, or for whatever reason. And you're taking these guys, elevating them to a level of success they can't handle, and then you see it happen with breweries all the time, and then all of a sudden they can't keep up with it, and the brand crashes because the fickle IPA-only consumer abandons them at the first sign of a beer they didn't like. You see it with Aslan in Virginia right now. Those guys are great, and they're getting a ton of hate on social media because all of a sudden they can't keep up with production. These guys aren't getting flamed out, but our good buddies at Hidden River, they're brewing all these beers. They're getting inundated. Only one style of beer sells for them. It's their New England IPAs. Everything else takes a while for them to sell, and they're having trouble keeping up with production. And then no matter which way they turn, if they make the beer limited, people are mad at them for making it limited. If they don't make the beer limited, people are mad at them for selling out. And they can't keep up with the trend no matter what they do. And so you're expecting every brewery to behave, look, act, and brew exactly the same. And then, we're fortunate enough that we kind of cut out a brand that was different from this early on. So now even when we copy everybody else, people think it's supposed to be our brand.
Right, yeah.
But there's a lot of guys who came in this with a lot of talent and a lot of just smarts, but not a lot of industry experience, who fed into this consumer-driven fad and are now suffering a lot of difficulties at the hands of a very fickle consumer base that is convinced themselves that they are supporting local businesses, but in fact doing everything in their power to the detriment of the local businesses that they claim to be so important to their lives.
So who do you think feeds the cycle more? The beer community, the drinkers,
or the brewers that give in?
Right, brewers that give in and produce.
It's a vicious cycle because you have a couple brewers who foment this trend and who create this idea that this style of beer is the end-all, be-all of beers, and then other brewers like yourself who don't want to have any, who that's not your philosophy.
Damn the man,
but
that's not how you brew. Now you're doing it because you have to keep up, so you're just feeding back into it because you don't have any other choice.
Me and Kate would be eating cat food if we didn't brew the IPAs.
Exactly.
Though.
That's the thing. Like your livelihood.
Yeah,
your livelihood depends on being able to sell your product.
I don't want to.
Which is, it's obviously you want to do your own thing, cool. But it's like you said, the brewery's got to keep up with it. My problem is the breweries that have 8 taps on the wall, 4 of which are IPAs that are only moderately differently from each other, and that is that you don't have, like you said, you don't.
But the consumer's going to come in and they want to have all 4 of them,
and
they're going
buy a lot of them.
very meticulously give you adjectives.
All the differences.
Exactly.
You should do an experiment and do that, but have it actually all be the same beer because have different tap handles?
I've done it, and I've told people about it here. Here's a story about a couple of social experiments that we've ran. Number one...
Do you have a beer called Social Experiment?
We will.
All
That's
right.
a great name. Yeah. Number one, you guys remember a beer called Psychosomatic?
Yeah.
Psychosomatic, Attic and Saint. We had it the first time you were on the show.
Yes,
we did.
That beer's
at
awesome.
Free Will, yeah. So Psychosomatic, hoppy Belgian dark strong, sold like shit. Nobody liked it. Everybody said it was terrible, blah, blah, blah. We took the exact same beer. We called it Reasonable Deception. We put it back on as a Belgian IPA.
Oh, no.
It fucking flew. Everybody, and I swear to God, somebody looked at me and said, "This is so much better than Psychosomatic." Story number 2. We did a collaborative brew with a little company called Hidden River.
Yeah.
Over a couple of towns down.
Yeah.
Great buddies.
They're awesome.
I love
Awesome
those
place.
guys.
They're awesome.
And they're Kevin over there is probably like my closest friend in the beer industry.
Oh
right
my
now.
God, that's so funny.
Yeah.
You two are so goofy. This is such a similar way.
I
Oh my God.
love those guys. But so
His facial expressions and your giggle, like,
we did a collaboration beer together called Cooperative Conundrum.
Yeah.
We put it on tap. It was a hoppy wild ale. We fermented it with Trois.
We
which
had that
is-
on the show when we were there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we store-bought was initially fermented with Trois as well. You're going to see where this is going. We now ferment it with 090, but so nobody was buying Cooperative Conundrum. And I was so frustrated because it was such a good beer. About a month later, I brewed almost the exact same beer. The difference is so small that most people, if you're not a professional brewer or a professional in the beer industry, and had them and didn't have them side by side,
yeah.
you probably wouldn't be able to taste the difference because we fermented it with Trois when we did it the first time too. Store-bought is Fine IPA was born, and guess what? The first day we tapped it, we sold a keg and a half out of this tasting room. It's the same beer that didn't sell, and I had customers come in here saying, "I want an IPA," and I said, "Try this Cooperative Conundrum." They said, "But it's not an IPA." I said, "I know, but if I called it that, you wouldn't know the difference."
You wouldn't have,
and then they go, "Yeah, but I only like IPAs." And so,
You know, what I keep thinking this over and over again as you've been talking is like, I think the saddest thing, like beyond the financial aspect, beyond the strength of the industry, is that it took so long for American craft beer to become like accepted and respected
And now-
in the world because
Yeah.
it was American light lager, and everybody's like, "Oh, you stupid Americans and your tasteless piss water lager." And then we're like, we spent 20 years saying, no, we can make a diversity of really awesome fucking beers. And now it's, oh, you stupid Americans and your New England IPAs.
yes,
Like, you know what I mean?
And this is the big thing. This is what's so upsetting about this is that you essentially get punished for anything creative.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it comes out well or not. If it's not, you can brew a New England IPA all the time. You can brew a bourbon barrel stout twice a year. You can brew a sour, but only if it's very pale or has a very, very, very vibrant pink or red color with a fruit to it. And that is the only beer
It's like
you
you're
can
serving it to children. It has to be bright colors
no, but
and
it really,
sweets
like
and
these are
tastes
the
like candy
only
and-
beers that you can make. If you looked at our brew schedule right now, you'd be depressed because we got to keep the beer flowing, man. We got to
Yeah.
keep the wholesale going. So to answer the question that brought us in this circle, is it the consumer or is it the producer? I think there's two different sets of responsibilities, right? And I don't think that you get to claim to be a big fan of something or part of a community without taking some ownership of it. So I think on the consumers that wrap so much of their identity in being big craft beer drinkers, they have a tremendous amount of responsibility to try new products, to give things objective tries, and to also be self-aware enough to
and
know
to
that they're
understand
not
what they're drinking.
yeah, that they're not beer professionals,
Yeah.
and not liking something or something not being what you expected is not the same as that thing being bad. Producers, their responsibility is not to not brew what sells. What producers' responsibility, though, is, and why we're so gung-ho about not being full of shit, is to not lie about it, to not misrepresent what you're doing. If you're altering your brew process to make a beer appear a certain way, and then you tell the consumer, no, it looks this way because it's very fresh, you are lying to the consumer and you are doing something distasteful and irresponsible. If you brew a beer a certain way and it's the same base beer and you add a different fruit to it and then you tell the consumer you have made a brand new product, you are lying to the consumer. That is irresponsible. It's awful to do that. So, and admittedly, I just said
I was going to say, you just said you
we've
did
done that. It's a
Okay.
shitty thing to do. But there's a give and a
Yeah,
take here.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So like what's happening is we're all kind of in the situation where like brewers feel like they can't be successful if they don't engage in these things, right? Because we found out really quick that if we could call literally anything an IPA and it will sell. It doesn't even have to have hops in it, and people talk about the citrus notes. And if we And if we don't call it an IPA, no matter how hoppy it is, it's not going to sell. And it's just it's the bottom line. So you end up in these really hard situations where you just don't know what to do. And so you'll rebrand beers, or you'll do other things, or you'll brew the same exact home run IPA 20 times and put a different fruit in it and act like it's a different beer.
It's different, yeah.
And so there's kind of a responsibility on both parts. Unfortunately, without the consumer taking their end of the bargain and holding up their end of the bargain, we don't have the option to do our part. We don't have the option not to rebrand beer. We don't have the option not to brew unique things unless you let us.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think we both bear responsibility, but short of straight up lying to consumers about what we're doing to a beer to make it appear or look a certain way, we don't really have the option to do those things unless the consumer
Do
participates.
you think it has something to do also with like the circumstances under which a consumer consumes a beer? Because if you go to a bottle shop and buy a beer, you can't talk to a waiter, a staff member who works for that brewery, let alone a brewer.
Sure.
If somebody walks into your brewery and is legitimately open but doesn't know what they like, you can sit down and say, if you like this, try this. Like, just give it a sample. I'll give you a free sip. Like, give me a free little taster.
But
try
we
it,
get a lot of people in here who won't do that, even with the bartenders. And I would say almost as many people who won't. It's like almost a 50-50 split. But the same thing happens in the bottle shop, right? Like, if you're old enough to buy beer, you should be old enough to be self-aware and have some kind of objectivity if you're that concerned about beer without a coach. So, I'm not saying, like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. But you don't get to not do that and then tell everybody you're a really serious beer drinker. That's the difference. You don't get to be vocal on all the beer forums and insist that you are some super knowledgeable beer person and then also only eat the chicken fingers.
But don't you think that a lot of those people honestly do believe that they are educated and they really do know what they're talking about?
And that, on the flip side, is the fault of the producer. That's the part where the producer comes in and has to say, you know what, you're not a genius just because you decided to walk into my brewery instead of somebody else's. This is not the most amazing beer of your dreams just because I want to sell it to you. That's the part where, like, producer honesty, business honesty comes into it. Because, to be completely honest with you, people wouldn't feel like they were these beer experts and these beer connoisseurs and everything like that if a whole generation of brewers didn't make you feel like you deserve an award for picking their brewery to walk into, And it's that level of pretension that the people on our side of the bar in our community actively cultivate and revel in that allows this atmosphere to exist.
So here's a question then. As a brewery owner and a businessman who clearly has strong opinions about this, what are you doing to try to get out of that rut that the industry seems like it's stuck in?
Are you in my head?
The biggest thing that, I know Kate and Jim have a lot of, like, other business stuff that we do. We look to be a little more active in the community outside of just, like, the very standard things. We just did a charity event last night for the PALS organization, which brings in a community that is not traditional craft beer drinkers. We don't shy away from those kind of things. We try and kind of create an atmosphere that welcomes all comers, those kind of things. On my side, we're still trying to produce the other beers. We will produce beers and say before we even brew them, I guess this one's not going to sell. We still have an active barrel program full of stuff that doesn't have fruit in it. And only one set of bourbon barrels, and all those kind of things, so that we can encourage and we can have these beers available and we can brew them. But most importantly, I think for me, is when I talk to a consumer, is to just be honest about what I'm doing. Right? That's my big thing. That's the number one thing that I it's not just because it's my personality, it's because I think it's really important to be as honest as possible in as many forums as possible about what's going on with my beer, what I can tell is going on with other people's beer, and why this is all the way that it is. I think that's the big thing. I mean, I listen to your podcast semi-frequently. I talk to other brewers. You got a lot of guys going around acting like they're curing cancer because they did something that we figured out how to do before we figured out how to write. So it's just about being realistic.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
That needs to be a T-shirt.
It's funny because this has come up before, and I don't remember the context, but it's weird because like the beer circles that we travel in doing the podcast, like my experience with craft beer is 90% beer busters, and I don't see these things. Like I hear about them, but like the people we talk to and the people I drink with are people who aren't like that. So it's kind of weird that there's like this. I'm sure Steph is giving me a look like she knows some people, but
and I'll admit it, I have had some New England IPAs that I thought were freaking delicious.
And they're great.
But
and I don't
at least I'm knowledgeable and I understand.
But and the thing is, like, we're not demonizing that particular style. It has a place. It has its purpose.
And it's
what it represents and the thing it has become.
It's the...
Oh, God, we're talking about it like it's an American light lager.
Well, but the thing is, it's
going to become so oversaturated that it goes the way of the light lager.
No, and it pisses me off, like, because IPA is not. If I'm going to drink a beer, I love Pilsners. Like, that is my freaking style. That's what I want to drink. I want to drink clean German lagers, and Pilsners are my favorite. Kolsch, give it all to me. And I love a well-made IPA, but it does really piss me off as someone who likes a diverse range of beers, that when I go to a bar, a lot of times what's on tap is just IPA. Like last night, I went to one of my favorite spots that I go to drink all of the time, and half of the beers were IPAs or double IPAs, and the other half were all barrel-aged, high-ass percentage beers, dark stuff. And I'm like, really? That's not what I want to drink. I want a nice Saison or a Kolsch or a Pilsner or, a freaking Dunkel, or give me a red ale, Why does it have to be all of this? So hopefully there's going to be that shift that enough of us that love to drink a variety of styles will start complaining and be like, why the frick do you have all these damn IPAs on? Like, put other shit on too. I guess we need to be more vocal as well and demand that there is more variety again.
And I think that part, though, unfortunately, has to come from the producer. There needs to be some level of accountability on the producer to say, because to be honest with you, IPA is easy money. When I wasn't joking, when we brew a batch of IPA, the wholesale batch of it sells out in an hour. And that's not because we're awesome. Let's be real honest about that.
Come on, Ethan, you're awesome.
No, I think I'm awesome in my personal.
But it's not necessary. Like, one isn't necessary for the
other. Sure. Like that. It's not because, and I'm very proud of Store Bought. We think Store Bought's a really good IPA. We wouldn't sell it if we didn't.
Right.
But that being said, it's not selling out because of the merits of the beer. It's not selling out because of the creativity of our branding. It's not selling out because Kate is a business genius and does a lot of really great stuff. It's not selling out because Jim does an incredibly great job managing the sales, logistics, and the distribution, all those kind of things. It has nothing to do with that. It sells out because it has the IPA in the brand name. We could be anybody. Every single brewery's experience with their cloudy IPA of the moment is the exact same. And that's why you go into a bar and you see all of those things. So there needs to be some level of accountability on the producer where you're selling other styles of beer too. We've got a bunch of other styles of beer on tap right now. I know one of my favorite places to hang out, Local 44 in Philly right now, is...
We're recording there this summer.
They're selling our black lager, and it's awesome.
Wait, you made a black lager?
It's on tap right now.
We're drinking that, right?
Sure.
Add it to the list. Hells yeah.
But so they're selling that, right? So we're really happy to know our Grand Cru, Cousin Stupid, which honestly is a hard style to sell. That's the beer we're proudest of. That's why we named it after Jim, and that's why that's why it's our Grand Cru, because it's the beer we're proudest of. And if that beer's hard to sell, though, because it's not an easy sell, but we brew it anyway, and we make a really concerted effort to sell it anyway. There needs to be a level of accountability in these to other producers, and this is me, any brewer that's listening to this podcast, brewers who I may have complimented on this podcast before and are now doing a ton of New England IPA releases all the time as well. I'm not going to name anybody in particular. Other brewers that I used to work for that are now doing it. Just brewers in general. There needs to be some level of accountability outside of, if you care about your industry existing, and I feel this really strongly, if you care about your industry existing, other brewers, if you care about the things that made you want to start working in it long enough ago that you were qualified to open a brewery and it is now running well on the merits of your product, you need to be willing to brew a set of beers that take a little more effort to sell so that they exist in the marketplace. And in some cases, just for the sake of them existing. Because if all any of us do is brew nothing but hazy IPAs, 5 years from now, we will all be owned by AB InBev and we will all be unemployed. And that's the honest truth, because it's like you said, it's the same thing as light lager. If it's all the same style, it's all the same style. So there's accountability on the producer's part.
I think that hazy IPAs are the Nickelback of beer.
Oh, wow.
I think we need some more beer.
Yeah,
maybe we all need to take a deep breath.
And I'd also like to take some time to actually talk to Kate for a couple of minutes.
Why don't we get a beer or two, and then we'll let Kate talk.
Okay.
Beer me! Beer me! Beer me! Beer me!
I've got a couple of things that I need to say right now. So 4 beers have magically appeared on the table, which is awesome, and I love when that happens. But 2, the guy that runs the food truck that's here brought a lot of food out for us.
And it's awesome.
Every last bit of it is some of the best food I've ever eaten in my life.
It's so good.
What's the name of the truck?
The Vita Taco Truck.
Vita Taco
Or
Truck.
Vita Eats, I believe.
Vita Eats.
And they have
Vita
a restaurant in Havertown. They just started with a food truck. So they're the first time they're here tonight. And
It's amazing.
It's phenomenal. We got nachos. We got loaded tater
Loaded
tots.
tots.
We got some tacos going on.
Yeah, so of course we had to give him a shout out.
And he just
Absolutely.
seems like an all-around really nice guy.
Yeah.
Just
That's true
saying.
too.
Very friendly.
That's important.
we always love when the food trucks bring, everyone who's working food. We always like that.
It's
It's always
nice,
helpful.
Last time we were here, it was the Indian pizza truck.
Oh, yeah.
That was
They
really
hooked it
good,
up,
too.
too.
Yeah.
That pizza was freaking delicious. I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
So beer.
So
Beer.
What should we drink first?
Start with the Maybach, I guess.
Yay!
So this is Swill.
Swill.
Yes. Makes me want to watch goats.
Yeah, right.
Goes well with loaded tots, by the way.
Yeah, goes well with tacos.
It's really, really good. So what's the story behind this one?
It's a really, really classic German Maybach. I'm not going to confirm or deny that I stole the recipe from Hofbrauhaus, where I used to brew. But it is a very classic Bavarian version of a Maybach. We'll say that.
What is the ABV? Because my box can be up there.
6.8.
That's not bad.
I could take a moss of this.
Very
delicious.
nice. Very nice. Well, while we're sipping on this, we got to listen to Ethan. We said rant at the beginning, but I think at the end it was a very, very interesting conversation.
It's a passionate discussion.
And things that need to be said, and
Yeah.
I'm glad that we got to talk about it. But Kate, this is your first time on the show,
Yeah.
so why don't you tell us, our listeners, your relationship to the brewery here and everything that you do?
So, I guess it was 2 years ago around this time. Jim, who's my husband, who's our third business partner, came home. He had dinner with Ethan. They had beer and wings.
Yep.
And he came home and he said, "Kate, you want to start a brewery with Ethan?" And I said, "Okay." I said, "Let's talk to him about it. Let's see what, And, we just had many conversations, and I just loved the idea. Obviously, my work life and career did not start in beer, so it's been wonderful for me to learn something new later in life, to start from scratch. And Ethan's been a wonderful teacher, everything from the technicalities of beer to just understanding the beer marketplace. And a lot of my background is in compliance and business, so I make sure we follow the rules.
You have to have that person to keep the brewer in check. Like, that's really the
Especially
key.
when Ethan's your brewer.
That's very important.
I say, okay, how much did we make this month? What
Yeah.
did we sell? Let's pay our taxes. What can our labels say? I deal with the TTV. I deal with the state. So, and I do love that part. It's very natural for me. But I do love also talking to our customers and bartending. People always joke and say, "Oh, you're always smiling." And I say, well, because it's fun for me to talk about beer and talk. Most people are very complimentary about our beer and they love being here. And so who wouldn't want to just come and spend time with people who are enjoying good beer and a good atmosphere and stuff. And so so I deal with a lot of the business stuff. Ethan was kind enough to let me brew once with him, which was quite a fun experience to do the whole thing from start to finish.
Which beer was that?
It was called Trick Show. It was a Brett Pale Ale, and It had some problems towards the
It
end.
actually did have some problems. It was about we were still learning the open tops at the time.
Okay, yeah.
But
So you were like, you're not allowed in here again.
The problems were conditioning issues. They weren't brew issues. So
But it was really educational for me because I said to Ethan, I want to see the whole thing start to finish. Like, I want to mill, I want to mash in. Of course, I don't have the technique that, Ethan does to do that. But it was really the best experience to really understand start to finish how it works. So, So I'm trying to be here as much as I can and keep everyone on the straight and regular. Keep us all, everyone getting along.
Is that hard being like a family business?
It's funny because we did talk about that, both Jim and I privately, and then also with Ethan, and this is not just because it's my business partner, but Ethan's always been my favorite Buckman relative, even from when he was young. So, and you really think okay, take that family piece out of it. Can I work with this person? Can I trust this person? Because it's really it's a marriage, it's a partnership, for better or for worse, you're in it together. So, I really didn't have any qualms about that. Neither Jim or I did. So, we trust him implicitly with, creating recipes and, making the magic happen here in the brewery. So we have had some growing pains, which have all been good problems to have, right? We're distributing now, we're growing, but yeah. And I think the one thing that's tricky, in any partnership is just being able to be open and honest and not let the personal stuff get in the way. And we were joking after our first year anniversary, well, no one has strangled anyone. We've made it to a year. That's a big thing to celebrate. So, and we do have a lot of fun here. So,
I think we sort of worried about that because we're all related. Wayne and Dan are brothers, and I'm their cousin. And when we decided to make this an official business and fill out the LLC papers and all that, I think there was a little bit of hesitation. We always said we are family first. The business will never, the business will end before we'll let it ruin our relationship. But I almost think it's easier working together because we almost have this silent communication that we've known each other our whole lives. We know what each of us is good at. We know they know when to just ignore my bitchy rants or when Wayne gets lazy and you almost it almost
mostly Dan
flows.
and I knowing that Steph can take care of a lot of things.
Well, and I think we just know how it's going to flow and we understand how it's going to operate because we just know each other so well.
Yeah,
and our business isn't quite the scale of your business, but
there's a nice benefit to knowing the people you work with, go into business with ahead of time.
I mean, there's no hard feelings. We've been honest with each other our whole lives too, and I'm sure you feel
Sometimes
the same way.
to a fault.
If you need to tell Ethan, Ethan, fucking knock it off, come on.
And it's funny, a lot of our bartenders too are family, and so it's kind of and people ask me all the time, is it weird that your brother-in-laws are here or whatever? I'm like, no. I said I trust them, and we do joke around a lot. We always have our inside jokes and things, but I do think there is the comfort levels that it definitely helps with having that base trust, and we are in it together. And when there's differences, we have to come back to we are in it together, and we're making beer, and to me that's really fun. Just to learn something new and just interact with people that, and back to Ethan's comments about I've bartended where people come in and say, I just want your IPA, nothing else. Even we may have 3 or 4, but they get afraid if there's something in it or it's a farmhouse IPA, they get nervous.
There's another word in front of those letters.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But we actually, I don't know if you've noticed on our tap list, we have this little key that Ethan came up with. One of the items.
Jim started it. So Jim started it with a star next to anything that was I like IPAs.
Right.
So when somebody would come in and say I like IPAs, he'd say anything with a red star because we didn't have a lot of IPAs at the time. And now it's evolved. So there's I like dark beers, I like light beers. What's the brewer's favorite? That kind of stuff.
And it's helpful because some people, they do get very, kind of fearful about trying something new, which I never understood. For me...
That's one thing I don't understand because I will drink any crazy beer you put in front of me.
Same here.
Because and there's beer. I mean, obviously there's beers I've had that I've hated, but I'll try it. I'll try anything. I don't get that.
Some people are so afraid to just make the commitment. And as you know, we have 4 ounce, 8 ounce, and 16. Some people will be even too afraid to even try a 4 ounce. It's too much.
You have nothing to lose from trying a 4 ounce pour of a beer.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Why would you be afraid of it? If you don't like it, you don't like it. Fine, whatever. It was 4 ounces. Probably cost you what, $2, $3?
Somewhere $1.
$1, $1.50, yeah.
But we do have for all the people that come in and say, I just want an IPA, give me the IPA. There are people that come in and say, oh, I'm so glad you guys don't have all IPAs and all fruit beers. Like, I love that you have Belgians. I love that you have lagers.
I'm in that group.
You know, and I also love the people who I'll say, what size would you like? They won't try the beer. Just give me a 16. I'm going for it. Okay.
Nice.
And they're not afraid. They're just going to, whether they love it or not, they could appreciate it.
Well, and then you uncover a lot of layers of the beer, too, if you have a full pour of it, because you might start off with it's nice and crisp and refreshing, and so much more of the characteristic comes out when it warms up a little bit.
Right.
You cannot 100% appreciate a beer unless you have a full pour of it. I completely agree with that.
You can get a good taste and a good feel for what it is, but you're right.
Yeah,
you need
but if
the
there's
full
a
pour.
beer on the menu that you look at that and you're like, yeah, I don't know, celery and pistachios and gummy bears, that might not be
when
so
I was
good.
at Dogfish one time, they had a beer called Hot Soup,
Oh, yeah.
and it came with a carrot stick in the beer. That beer was actually really freaking
Yeah,
delicious. They should make it again anyway, but that maybe you said celery.
But I think part of the fun of beer, as much as I love a solid traditional style beer, part of the fun is the adventuring of like finding crazy stuff. Like I always think of when we were at Oakbrook and they have the
rosemary beer.
Yeah, with the sprig of rosemary in it.
The parrot one.
Yeah. And I thought, you look at that and you think, oh, it's kind of gimmicky. There's a thing in my beer, but that was like one of
There's
the
a thing
greatest.
in my
It
beer.
was incredible.
That's one of the
stole
best
night
beers
for
I've
me.
ever had, just because I never expected
The
that.
aroma that the fresh rosemary brought to the beer.
I didn't think it was going to make it that much of an experience.
Same here.
He's going to go get some rosemary.
That's what I thought.
He either has to take a leak or we just sparked an idea.
Yeah, something like that.
Or both.
Or
Or
both,
we've had beer that was made with brisket, in the mash or
Ugh.
whatever.
Yeah.
We even made Steph
Goat
drink that one,
brains
the
and
goat
all.
brains one. All kinds of crazy beers. But
I think you did get an idea because now there's a bottle.
jeez. Freak
sweet.
show? Is that what that says? A freak in
yeah.
the sheets.
What should we drink next?
That's why I got that. We should drink that next.
Oh, all right.
Okay, we're changing things up.
I like when brewers just bring bottles to the table.
just-
I
Random
can't
bottle.
stop without pointing out our little wax stand.
That
down
is
there.
the best.
I love it.
That is the best.
That is awesome. You almost don't want to open it because of that, but open
I'm
it.
gonna have
Almost.
We do love our bottle, too. It's a pain to label, but we do love it.
Yeah, and then the struggle is you make it look awesome, and then you have to destroy it to get it open.
But speaking of this beer, so it's not something that we have on tap, obviously. So some people are afraid to purchase it because they can't try it first.
Right, yeah.
And it's got a great description on the side where all the bartenders, we talk about it, but some people are just legitimately afraid. Then you have other people who are like, oh my gosh, I'll try it no matter what. It sounds awesome, and so it's always interesting to me how people are. It's like that fear factor.
It's weird, yeah.
That's something that really surprised me getting into beer is how afraid people are to make a commitment to just trying something. I mean, I'm sure
Yeah.
we've all tried beer where you're like, I didn't love it, or I really didn't like it. Like people ask me, what's your favorite beer on the tap list? Well, I can appreciate them all, and I like them all. It depends what mood I'm in or what am I eating. And it's hard for people, I think, some people to understand that you can appreciate things without actually loving it or
Yeah.
thinking it's awesome.
Yeah. But I think one of the most
have
fun things to do
multiple
is to walk into a bottle shop that's got a huge variety and find the weirdest looking thing you've never
Right.
heard of and just buy it.
Right.
Why not?
And try it and see, yeah.
What worst is going to happen is you'll dump it down the drain, but you've spent money, you've thrown away money on bigger
Right.
things than that before.
Right. And then you could say, I tried that,
Yeah.
and it wasn't my favorite, but
Yeah.
I tried it, so.
Success.
the bottle is open.
Yay.
So this is Freak in the Sheets.
So we did have a lady in the streets.
I was just going to say, did you have a lady in the streets?
last summer, right?
Yeah, last summer.
Did we ever say what kind of beer this is? I may have missed
So
it.
it's just a wild. We're calling it a wild ale aged in white wine barrels.
Ooh,
Interesting.
I like the sound of that.
So Lady in the Streets was the same base beer aged in white wine barrels with Chardonnay grape juice in it. This is aged in those same barrels, but instead of Chardonnay grape juice, we added just our wild yeast culture to hopefully give it a similar fruity character through the use of the wild yeast. So it's an extension on that idea that we were playing with.
Oh, wow. That's really good.
Thanks,
Holy
man.
crap.
I love the artwork.
Tart yet
You
crisp.
guys have the best
But it's
branding.
not an overbearing tart either. That's the thing.
No, it's not jowly.
Well, there's no bacteria in it. It's just Brett.
Yeah.
A lot of our wild beers are just Brett, so the acidity is very, very low.
Right. Yeah.
That's nice.
It is.
I like the white wine barrel.
Yeah, it's cool, right?
It adds a nice, like, it almost, I don't want to say mellows, but it just like, because Brett can sometimes be like super sweet, tardy, and like, you know what I mean? I'm sticking my tongue out. Our listeners
Sort of
can't see that.
dries it out a bit.
Yeah, it cleans it up.
Yeah.
I always use that phrase, but it just gives a really nice, interesting finish to the beer. It's good. So how long was this in the barrels?
About 6 months.
Is this, you said, what was the other version of this called?
Lady in the Streets.
So are you going to continue this?
Well, we're out of the puns now. Well, not the puns, I don't know, but like the ludicrous references.
We can't
are
continue
out of.
after that. Yeah.
Oh, I feel like you can come up with something. Create your
Well,
own.
we have like a bunch of. This is what the whole barrel program that we do is like. Short of those 4 bourbon barrels, our whole barrel program is this kind of stuff. So we have a grisette that's coming up on the wild yeast culture. We have a Flemish pale coming up on the wild yeast culture. An Ode Brune. And the idea is just all of these things kind of repeating. So while we're doing all the fruit sours and all those things that are a little quicker turnaround in the stainless, we have this barrel program slowly developing these different things. And some of them will go on draft, some of them will go in bottles. But yeah, we'll continue to eke out these beers. Some of the Flemish beers, I have like a little like dystopian communist name theme that I do. But the beer, this idea of the beer, this is what we really want to do. That's why another one of the beers you have here is supposed to be juxtaposed to store-bought, the extra furniture, as like, this is what we're doing to make the money, and this is the type of beer that we think IPA drinkers would really like. That is the type of beer that we actually want to be making. So the stuff that goes in the bottles, we get to sell at a higher price point because that's what the market is. We get to sell it at the higher price point, frankly and honestly, because of the quality of it. And so we don't really care if it flies off the shelves or not. And so this is the stuff that like I really want to be making. And we do a lot of other stuff to kind of fund these projects.
And you have more barrels than last time we were back here. You don't have much space anymore. You keep putting more shit back here. But I assume your plan is to continue to grow the barrel since you're so passionate about that.
Actually, to be honest with you, no. They're going to be the batteries that we have now. Each have a distinct culture in them, and it is the length that I want. And growing any more of it would just kind of force it down people's throats. It's only special if it's special, right? So
you still want it to be rare.
Not necessarily rare because
I'm just giving you shit.
Yeah, but we're talking about a pretty large amount of beer when we produce these things. You know, every run of these that we do produces almost 100 cases of 750 milliliter bottles. So that's a lot of beer. Yeah. In our market, considering how insular it is, that's not exactly rare. But we want, I want to be able to myself focus on this aspect of the the projects, no matter how big the company gets. So part of it is, like you said, space. You know, these barrels are going to go back in that stack off in the corner near the bar pretty soon. We're going to be adding more conicals here. We're running out of space. So part of it is that, but part of it is also, no matter how big the company gets or what happens or how distribution looks, 3 years from now, I want to be able to come in and say, like, okay, this is the stuff we're doing to make money. This is the stuff we're doing here. This is the stuff that I'm doing because I like to do it, you know? And so if I can't personally look at those barrels and tell you what's in every one of them and what stage they're in, I've kind of lost the point of having them here. Because to be frank, they're not our big money maker. So yeah, what's the point of having 100,000? And unless the market drastically changes, it doesn't matter how, to continue my theme, it doesn't matter how good the liquid in that bottle is. It's never going to be the money maker. We just have to kind of be okay with that.
Well said. It's super good.
Thank you.
It is really nice. Yeah.
I don't want to finish it, so let's drink this next.
Yeah. This is that black lager we mentioned earlier, right?
This is the one I demanded that
Yeah,
we
the one that we had to add to the
keep
list.
on rolling.
Oh, yes.
Oh, it smells so.
That's my jam.
So wonderful.
Oh, wow.
Oh man, that's really good.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Oh wow.
It's like it's malty and
A little roasty,
Yeah.
little,
yeah.
but not super like thick.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
it drinks pretty easy.
Yeah. What's the ABV for this one?
4 something.
Oh wow.
Yeah, 4 something.
I would have put it slightly higher.
It's so good.
It
It's
is
even
really
a little
nice.
smoky.
It's got a little at the end. Yeah.
This is we wanted to brew a black beer that people would be okay drinking in the summertime, and I have like a lot of philosophies about what the actual thing is doing flavor-wise or in your mouth that makes you like it for a different seasonal, and it's not typically a flavor thing.
Yeah.
So it's we wanted something with a short finish that didn't overwhelm the palate, and also had a full body without being like mouth coating.
Yeah.
I feel like those two things, the mouth coating texture and the long finish, are the things that can kind of like really oppress you in the heat. So that's why we brewed a black lager.
Very well put. Yes.
Well, it's funny. A lot of people, I hadn't had this style until Ethan brewed it, but a lot of people in the tap room, like, they expect it to be a stout. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, it's thin, or oh, it's not, creamy, or this, and it's like, well, it's not supposed to be. Like,
Yeah.
it's meant to be, and that's where I love Ethan's story behind the name. It's
The
I was
fat
gonna ask
guy in
that,
suspenders.
yeah.
So when you're real fat, as I have this problem.
Dude,
this
you
is
are not fat.
This is a no. I hide it well, but I have
Got
this
things
problem.
tucked away and taped to the
so,
side. And
So this is a problem that you have when you hit a certain weight level. A belt is no longer helpful. It instead pushes your pants down
Yeah.
underneath your belly.
Yep.
So you need to enter, especially in formal wear, into the world of suspenders
Right.
as another option to hold your pants up. That's where the name comes from. It's another option for a summer tapless.
Okay.
Wow.
Wow.
Way too much thought into
lot of
all this.
thoughts.
But it's funny, once you explain that to somebody, they're like, oh, yeah, I get it. You
perfect
do need suspenders.
And also, I always thought suspenders were what people had before somebody thought of belts. But now you've given them like a whole other separate purpose.
The belt is really, for a fella like me, really decorative. It's really to steal a line from Jim Gaffigan. It's to make it so you don't have to think that this is all one surface. Like you don't have to.
Sort of breaks things up a little bit. Very nice.
It's an accent piece.
So I made the mistake of logging into our Beer Busters Untapped account on my phone, and now I'm getting like 800 notifications.
Oh, it's Ethan's favorite thing.
I know.
I was going to ask you about this later, but are you still freaking reading Untapped reviews?
No, I go through a ritual. Kate knows about it. I do it all the time. I'll download Untapped to see how a beer did, and then I'll get really pissed off, and then I'll delete Untapped, and then I'll download Untapped, and I'll just kind of go.
Every now and then when I'm here, I'll leave you little messages in
I
my
see 'em.
comments
I see 'em.
just to see if you're still...
I look at Untapped like in a work capacity, like on the Stickman account, like once every couple of days, just to make sure nobody's like checking it. We have two big problems with Untapped. One is that people will often check in Stickmen, plural, brewing company, and Oregon's beers to us, or vice versa. And even though the labels are totally different, and in our bar, you're sitting in front of a giant logo of our brand. So it perplexes me how people can look at the logo on the phone, look at that,
because
and then,
beer causes intoxication.
yes, that's true. And so that's the one, is to do like the housekeeping of it. And then the other reason is like, I don't know, you find a lot of dumb comments on Untapped, but it is a good way to gauge people's response, or at least that community's response to a beer. The problem is I'm very good with criticism when it is thought out. I am not great at criticism where the criticism indicates a lack of knowledge about the thing that you're talking about. So I have trouble with Untapped.
This is a missed game opportunity right now, by the way.
What's that?
Comments on Stickman Brews.
Just on Stickman?
Oh, yeah. Or any. We've done
we
this
get
before.
some hilarious comments.
Share.
Oh my god. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head. Well, I know me and you got into a discussion about it on Facebook because somebody commented they gave a beer a 4-star rating, and then under it wrote "kinda sucks." So that
Yep,
was great.
true.
Oh, somebody got a sour beer that we did, Tom Selleck's Mustache, and they commented on it. Smells like
Teen
old
Spirit.
toes with a tinge of balls.
Well, that could be accurate, though. Just saying.
If if you are
Tinge of balls.
if you're encountering genitals that smell like sour beer, you should at the very least
Marry
be
that man.
using protection and probably demanding an STD check.
Yeah.
There's an infection going on.
I want to nominate A Tinge of Balls as the title of this episode.
Tinge of
Already
balls.
wrote it down.
Tinge of balls.
Trust me, I'm ahead of you.
No one has left comments.
Meh.
Here we go. Fat guy in suspenders, 2.5 stars. Just not my style. Everything else was great.
So what does that mean?
So why did you?
He gave everything else a 4.
Also,
but
don't rate it
don't
if
rate
it's
it
not
if
your
it's not your
style.
style.
That's why I don't rate
You're not
beers anymore
rating the
at
quality
all.
of the
Unless
beer.
it's,
You're rating your personal.
I rate it if it's really fucking incredibly good or one of the worst things I've ever had.
Here we go.
Oh, here we go.
Store bought is fine.
Oh boy.
Thou without nose. I guess he means though without nose. Easy drinker ale.
He meant thou.
Not sure where the I and the P are though
What?
in IPA.
Oh.
It's meant to sound intelligent.
No.
The India and the Pale. Well, it's not from India. And he does know that,
he's
right?
saying he doesn't feel that this beer is hoppy enough. Is
I
what
know,
it's
but I'm saying literally, it is pale in color.
yeah, it is. It is. That's
And-
what that P means.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Here we go. This is kind of amazing.
That's
There you go.
great.
there you go.
4.5 stars. On cask, this satisfied. Hanging with art students.
Oh yeah, hanging with art students was hanging with Carney's, the cream ale you were drinking, except
delish.
pre-vanilla, dry hopped in a firkin.
Nice.
I have to say, Brendan's really doing some amazing things with
Yes.
Firkins these days. Like, really, just pretty much every Saturday we've got some new creation he's worked on.
Oh, that's
so,
cool.
Yeah.
Except this Saturday we don't because we sold them. So we don't have a
For shame.
There's actually some really nice positive comments on these
I don't
too.
see them.
But you know what?
But
There is
we're not reading
there is
those.
this
They're not as fun.
phenomenon, right? That Ethan pointed out to me that whoever checks the beer in first, if it's not
Sets
a good
the
way,
tone.
it sets the tone.
Yeah.
It's all. It could be all downhill or all awesome.
Tastes like a homebrew, but one
Yeah.
I'd be proud to have made.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. Yeah.
Is that supposed to be an
Yeah,
insult?
I'm not sure what that means either.
Wow.
I had never known about Untapped until getting involved in the brewery here, and so I'm really surprised at some of the stuff people put on there as comments or the rating.
right.
It's like if you don't
To be
like
honest-
the style,
Hold on, this makes me want to comment on. I'm going to delete my last check-in and add a comment.
Well, that's a common complaint. People, if you rate it shitty, but you say it's not your style, then you're not really giving it a fair
Right.
shake. Like
Right.
You're just,
like, can you appreciate a beer for what it is and rate
Right.
it that way instead of just like, oh, I
or
liked
if it's
it,
not
I-
your style and you happen to drink it, just check it in and don't rate it.
Yeah.
You know. I don't use it. I have an Untapped account. I've checked in like 8 beers. I don't get it. I don't understand the appeal of it. The only thing I get about Untapped is that every time Steph isn't sure if she's had a beer before, she can look it up.
Yeah.
And that
because
could be
she's
helpful
checked
just
in
for
every
tracking,
beer.
like for your personal, like, oh, did I have this beer? Did I like it? Would I get it again? But I have to laugh at Ethan's ritual. He'll say to me, Kate, I deleted Untapped today. I was like, okay, Ethan, it's all right.
It
Next
must.
week, I
It must
deleted it
be
again.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It must be Thursday. I just don't want to pick up my phone and punch away every time I drink a beer.
And
Like,
it's amazing how many people in our tap
That's
room.
fine if you're
they're
into
doing
it. Don't
that,
give me
you
looks,
know?
Steph.
Like,
You can't read out loud, though. Ethan has to actually go read it.
Is this like mean tweets?
No, it's like super positive and
Oh,
nice.
great.
it actually is.
I'm saying, damn the man, I'm typing good things about beers.
Well, you're very nice to me. Thank you.
If it's a good beer, I'm going to say good things about it. And I want you to keep making that beer because I want to keep drinking it. Notice it was the fastest one I consumed.
Yeah, that's true. I
All right, let's have fun.
was going to say, if you're done with your Untapped comments.
Are we doing this?
Yeah,
All right.
I think we probably should. I know you mentioned earlier what we are playing, Wayne, and I'm upset, but
Hey, man. It's in keeping with the theme.
is it though?
Cheers, Internet, and welcome to Happy Fun Time Games, the only podcast trivia segment that ages like a fine bag of donuts. Today, we venture once again into the seedy underbelly of the beer resellers' gray market of the Internet, courtesy of mybeerseller.com.
I hate this game.
I know you do. Where you can buy dusty old whales secondhand at outrageous prices to impress your pretentious friends.
Can I tell a quick story?
Sure.
We listened to the episode in the car the last time we played this game, and we played along with the game, and I guessed way different numbers than I did when we did this live.
Yeah, none of it really matters.
No, it doesn't, but I thought it was hilarious that I was way off.
It's all about
Anyway.
your state of mind. In case you don't
State
know,
of drunkenness.
now you know. MyBeerSeller.com is an eBay-style website where collectors post beers and other random beer stuff for sale under the legally required pretense that they are selling the bottle, not the contents therein, which is incidental and not intended for consumption. For this game, I will read a listing off of this website, and you must guess the asking price. The closest, without going over Spice of Life style, gets the point. And we will begin to my left with Dan.
Dennis the man.
Suddenly nachos. I looked over and it's like I caught him doing something wrong. He had nachos in his hand. This is Hill Farmstead 6 years.
All right.
Brewed in September of 2010, this Burgundian ale was aged for 50 months in oak wine barrels. 50 months. Bottled
How
in
long have they
November
been open?
2014. This beer has been nearly 6 years in the making. I do not know. A 375 milliliter bottle of 6 years, a super aged 8.5% ABV Flanders Red Ale is available for how much?
Oh my God.
Can I just say one thing? 6 years is 3 years too long for a proper Flemish.
Well, that skews my answers now.
But Ethan's not buying that.
No.
How about 100 to 125?
$125, says Dan. Kate, how much do you think that is going for?
I was going to say 175.
175. Okay, Ethan.
For a Hill Farmstead beer that's been aged for 6 years,
Yeah.
$350.
$350.
$1.
Steph is saying $1. The closest, without going over, is Dan.
Whoa!
The answer is $130.
Oh, man.
Yes.
Well,
moving
I'll take a
on
point.
to our next beer of the game, and this is a 2011 Founders Canadian Breakfast Stout. The original Founders Canadian Breakfast Stout. CBS, not to be confused with KBS, is a 10.6% ABV Imperial Stout brewed with a blend of coffees and imported chocolates and aged in spent bourbon barrels that have most recently been aging pure Michigan maple syrup. This limited 750 milliliter bottle
Wow, it's $750 of it.
from Founders 2011 Backstage Series can be had for, Kate, how much?
$300.
$300. Ethan, what do you think?
I'm going way lower. I want 55.
$55 says
Also,
Ethan.
where do you get the bourbon barrel aged maple syrup? That's what I want.
Vermont.
I've actually had some.
I have some in my fridge right now from Trader Joe's,
Dan,
actually.
Wow.
I think didn't David, our cousin
want
David, have
some.
that when we visited him in New York?
Maybe.
I think he
I
did.
don't
We have a
remember.
cousin that lives in Manhattan.
I'm going to say $76.
All right, Steph is saying $76, and finally Dan,
77.
$77. The closest, without going over, but still way off, is Kate with a guess
What?
of $300 because the
Wow.
asking price on mybeerseller.com is $2,000.
Oh my God!
Seriously? That person's an idiot.
$2,000.
You only got to sell it once if you charge that much
Exactly, yep. Moving on to Ethan. And our next item is not a beer. This is a 2008 Sierra Nevada Harvest Wet Hop Ale framed hop sack.
for it. Wait,
Wait, say that again?
like a used one?
Yeah, a framed hop sack. Very rare and hard to find, the poster says, which is kind of redundant. It's a framed hop sack used in the harvest of the 2008 release of Sierra Nevada's Harvest Wet Hop Ale.
Is it signed?
It is framed. No, it is framed using 100-year-old salvaged Douglas fir wood reclaimed from a hay barn in Sheridan, Oregon. This is getting as hipster as it gets. Truly, a showcase piece for any avid beer collector, and it can grace your wall for what price?
I'm gonna really assume the worst about this person. I'm gonna say $1,200.
Ethan saying $1,200. $50 says Steph. Dan, what do you think?
150.
Dan is saying $150. Finally, Kate.
I would say $750.
$750. The closest, without going over, is Ethan. No, Steph,
Thank God.
because it is a mere $100.
I was the frame that I
Assume
thought
the
was
worst.
going to like up the value. you know?
Salvaged Douglas fir wood from a barn of all places.
So it was a
in
bag
Oregon.
that held hops in it.
At one time, yes.
What does a hot
You're
bag
missing
look
out
like?
on a lost merchandise
So,
opportunity.
Here's a fun fact about nylon hop bags. They are very expensive, but they are the same size for our purposes and made out of the same material as nylon pantyhose that you can buy at CVS.
Yeah.
So that is what we use.
No, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see
We
that.
use the plus size ones because they hold more
Yeah.
hops. That's what we use.
Yeah.
So they
size pantyhose.
yes they cost like $3 for 8 of them. Great
All
deal.
about
What-
transparency to the consumer.
Pantyhose are
right?
you buying?
Do they come
I'll
in the
show
big
it to
plastic
you.
egg?
Holy shit.
No, I bought those before. These come in like a box from CVS, and I think they say saucy on them or something like that. I'll show
I'm
it to
going to
you.
start buying those pantyhose. I'm going to say the same that Stickman buys.
God.
Wow.
Moving on to our final entry
Thank God.
of the game. I don't know why everybody hates this game.
I
I
like
love
this
this game. I love this game. Steph is going to guess first on this one. This is Cantillon, because of course it is. Don Quixote, 2008. A rare beer indeed. Don Quixote, a fruit lambic brewed with Italian grapes, similar to Concord grapes or Fox grapes, excuse me. Going to go a little Latin on you. Vitis Labrusca. Brewed exclusively for a Florence, Italy pub in 2008. A 750 milliliter bottle, again, of this veritable Moby Dick can be had for
$249.
$249, says Steph. Dan, what do you think?
322.
322. Weird numbers.
Random.
Kate
I would say 1,000.
saying 1,000. And finally, Ethan.
$1.
I knew it.
Ethan saying $1. The closest, without going over, is Kate.
Oh, wow.
The asking price
Holy shit.
for this bottle of beer on mybeerseller.com is $12,500.
Oh my god.
Holy
They're out of
shit.
their motherfucking minds. Seriously?
However, to be fair, I did a little Googling, and you could probably get it for a couple grand, which is still a lot of fucking money. But seeing that $12,000, I just had to put it in today's
I
game.
purposely tried to keep my numbers lower because listening back to the last time, I was way over for most of them.
I always
didn't
like
work
to.
for
Here's
me,
a
though.
hint. I always like to pick one that's just completely outrageous.
All right.
'Cause it's
Well,
fun.
you had
Shouldn't
two.
say that, though. You're giving
Oh, it's
away
true.
your strategy.
That's all
We
right.
won't remember this.
because they won't remember.
That's true.
They won't. I could ask the same questions every episode, and
We
they would
wouldn't
have
remember.
no idea. So, adding up the points to see who our big winner is, and it is first timer on the podcast, Kate, with 2 points.
Yay, Kate.
Dan and Steph tied in second place with 1 point apiece, and Ethan,
Wow.
I've been on this
big old,
podcast.
you have a big old plastic egg full of pantyhose
I've been
on
on
the
this.
scoreboard.
I've been on this podcast 3 times. I have played 3 different games. I have scored 0 points.
Are you serious?
That's a true fact.
You should get a prize for that.
I think he gets the cupcake.
Do you want the red velvet
I
cupcake?
can't because of the belt thing. I'm trying to be able to wear belts again.
You better eat some damn
man.
Oreos, though. We brought
Oh, we
them
are
for
gonna
We
you.
did bring
drink you
Oreos.
guys see
He
the
needs a
fireworks.
prize, for sure.
Oh, my God.
Thanks, everyone, for playing today's Happy Fun Time game. And before we move on to Steph, shout out to our most generous patrons on Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/beerbusters to find out how to get your name on this exclusive list. We're giving love to people like Wolfgang, Von Colt, Victoria Miles, Ron McDonald, Josh Price, Marilyn Engelman, the one and only That's No Baloney, Joe Mansell, and of course our hometown brewery, Oak Brook Brewing Company.
Yay.
Remember, go to patreon.com/beerbusters.
And you will soon hear Beerbuster's last call.
Yes.
As a patron. All right. Well, on that note,
Your beer.
Know your beers.
Steph, what do we got? I want nachos.
Wow. So when Ethan sent me the list of beers and I saw my Bock, I automatically knew what I was going to talk about. So we're going to talk about a beer style today, and that is the Helles Bock. Helles Bock is category 4C in the 2015 BJCP style guidelines. It's a relatively pale, strong, multi-German lager beer with a nicely attenuated finish and is super drinkable. Also known as Maibock, however, some may dispute whether Helles or Pale Bock and Mai or Maibock are synonymous, but most agree that they are identical. Some believe that Maibock is more of a fest-type beer, hitting the upper limits of hopping and color for the range. Any fruitiness is due to Munich and other specialty malts, not yeast-derived esters developing during fermentation. The Helles Bock is a fairly recent development in comparison to the other members of the Bock family. The serving of Maibock is specifically associated with springtime and the month of May, which I assure you, it is the month of May right now in this moment as we're drinking this, dear podcast land. The hop character in a Helles Bock is generally more apparent than in other Bocks. It can be thought of as either a pale version of a Dunkelsbock or a Munich Helles brewed to Bock strength. While quite malty, the beer has less dark and rich malt flavors and can be drier, hoppier, and more bitter than a Dunkelsbock. It also has more of a rich malt character and more alcohol than a fest beer. So let's get down to the deets. The aroma is moderate to strong, grainy, sweet malt aroma, often with a lightly toasted quality, with moderately low to no hop aroma, often with a spicy herbal or floral quality. I wish we still had some. I drank mine. The appearance is a deep gold to light amber color, bright to clear clarity with a nice, large, creamy, persistent white head. The flavor is moderately to moderately strong, grainy, sweet malt flavor that dominates with some toasty notes, little to no caramel flavor, with moderate to no hop flavor. Moderate hop bitterness and clean fermentation profile. Well attenuated, not cloying, and with a moderately dry finish. The mouthfeel is medium body, moderate to moderately high carbonation, smooth and clean. A light alcohol warming might be present. Some commercial examples, the Altenmuster Maibock, Einger Maibock, Capital Maibock, Blind Tiger Maibock, Einbecker Mai Erbach, Hackerbeschor, Herbertusbock, and Marsbock. I'm sure a bunch of people are going to give me shit because I pronounced those wrong, but whatever. And of course, Swill.
Swill.
How do we do?
Swill.
And
it's freaking... Well, I finished it.
It's
delicious.
Bock.
Just, you like hit... I don't even want to call it sweetness, but just like that subtle... It was just perfect.
Thank you.
It was what the Maibock should be, in
Good
my
way to
opinion.
put it. Good way to put it.
Good way to put it.
Well, on that note, shall we...
Shall we drink some IPAs?
We're going to beer more.
Beer me! Beer me! Beer me! Beer me!
Oh, early. I slipped and hit it early. All right, so we do have two other beers.
Should we drink them side by side?
Yes.
Which is which?
They look
Store-bought is
identical.
fine.
The one that smells like Brett has the Brett in it.
For someone whose sense of smell is not exactly on point right now, is it in the rounded one or the not rounded one?
Store-bought is slightly brighter yellow, too.
Yeah.
Which
glass?
I think so.
If you put them next
Very
to each other,
slightly.
you know
Yeah,
what? If
very
you put them next to
slightly.
each other, the one that's a little clearer,
Yeah.
that's the store-bought.
Yeah?
That's the store-bought.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, consumers, don't get all hung up on that. They're both very hazy. You can only barely see light through the store-bought. I promise you, we did everything to make it look just as bad as you want it to look. I promise. So I guess we should start with the store-bought. Or you could drink them sip by sip.
Hey, you know what?
I was going back and forth.
It's fine.
So store-bought is our standard New England style IPA.
It's real juicy, man.
Thank you.
It is.
Thank you. And Extra Furniture is our farmhouse IPA. Extra Furniture so named because any beer, even an IPA, that is anything but a standard New England IPA, just makes kegs that sit around as extra
furniture. Yeah, actually, what's interesting...
At least you crack yourself up,
I
right?
could talk. There you
That
go.
laugh, I love it.
The extra furniture, when I first tasted it, like I thought of Hidden River. Like this reminds me of something I would have had at Hidden River.
Yeah.
It's like that sort of,
We bounce a lot of ideas off of each other and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I really love store-bought. It's fine. I think it's a delicious beer.
Thank you.
Do you like it?
I do.
All right. So at least you'll drink it.
It's like taking a nap when you're 10, right? Like naps are great. You're just resentful that somebody else is making you do it.
yeah.
Touche.
Now, this is the one that you said someone had store-bought after extra furniture and said, "Now this has the funk in it"?
No,
Or
they're not after extra furniture. It's just like an untapped comment. Like they had a store bought and they said like you really get that Stickman funk,
even though
you're tasting it right now next to a beer that's actually funky.
Right.
And there's no.
I was just trying to like figure out.
Like, I'm happy that people associate our brand with funk because we do a lot of funky beers, but it is hilarious to me that we spent like a year being just harangued about brewing funky beers and not juicy IPAs. And as soon as we brew a juicy IPA, one of the comments we get on it is,
funk.
"Oh, you get
well,
the
and
funk."
I think some people might be using that to describe, like, because there is like in the store bought, there's like a hop dankness, and I think maybe that's what they're talking about with the funk. Yeah.
So this is single hopped store bought. It's single hopped with a hop that I won't tell you what it is until we sign the contract.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, because it has we got a year out of it not being popular, and it's just becoming popular, so we have to sign a contract for you. So I'll tell everybody what the single hop and store-bought is once we sign the contract.
But here we are with a beer that just came out of a barrel. So what is this beer? What barrel did it come from?
So here's the story with this beer.
This one smells delightful, by the way.
Smells really nice. Why
So
does Steph have more than the rest of us?
Because she
I
poured
poured
everything.
them.
when we opened about 3 months in, we brewed a beer called Extra Gluten.
Yep.
It was a sour mash that got a little aggressive, and it created a chemical called isovaleric acid, which makes that like blue cheese, Parmesan, sweat sock thing.
Oh, yeah. I remember we talked about this last time, I believe.
So it was intense. So I told Steph the last time we were on the podcast,
Yep.
I served that beer until I thought it became offensive. I pulled it off, and the rest is aging in white wine barrels with Brett, because the Brett will synthesize those acids, turn them into new funky esters that will be delightful. And I said I was going to call this beer I Told You So, Steph.
I remember that.
So you are drinking I Told You So, Steph, who just said on air, on the record, this beer smells delightful.
It does. I'll eat my words. It smells super complex, too.
It does. It tastes very winey. Like it's got a very
haven't
nice like,
tasted it
white
yet.
wine character.
And you'll notice
Ooh,
that the
yeah.
sourness is really faded, too, because the
Yeah.
Brett eats lactic acid also.
What's interesting is that the aroma is a lot more potent than the flavor.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Yeah, but it's delicious.
It's nice.
Okay, so you told me so. However, you should have never fucking put it on tap in the first place. You should have just put it in a damn barrel.
Well, a lot of people liked it when it was on tap at first.
A lot of people, you mean Jen?
No, a lot of people liked it. It was so. What happened is
I liked it if I did this.
yeah, right. So when it was first on tap, it wasn't so intense, right? What happened is, and this is like we were talking about conditioning, right? As the beer continued to condition in the kegs, the Trube, the Haze, which side rant to our first rant, Trube and Haze deadens flavor. It doesn't enhance it. So the Trube and the Haze cause the isovaleric, the offensive stuff, to be more mild. So I thought it was okay. I pulled it the day I didn't like it anymore. So that's the day we pulled it, and that's when what we had left went in the barrels. But we sold it until then. It was a little experiment. I had fun with it. I wanted to make a beer where the aroma was totally disconnected from the flavor, and that is kind of what we did. It's still kind of what we're doing. So
when will this see the light of day?
I'm going to give it another month or two, and then we'll probably put it on like a tap room only batch, because I still think it's, even though I'm really happy with it now, it's still a little funky, I think, for like the general public. But if we put it on tap here, we can kind of sell it to you, and if you don't like it, we can give you something else, you know.
Right. So for our listeners, about the end of June, beginning of July, look out for that. We'll definitely have to share it once it's on, but I'm not going to share it the day you put it on. So I can come and have a few first. I'll share it like 2 days after.
I feel like we should all be here for that.
But so I
sure.
do officially, this beer does have the Steph seal of approval on it now.
I love it. I think it's delicious.
Thank you.
It's really good. Cheers to you telling me so. It's really freaking good.
I knew he was right all along.
Yeah,
Of course you did. Oh, whatever. Screw you both.
Steph doesn't admit defeat very often.
So when someone disagrees with Steph, I'm just like, maybe. As long as it's not me, I know better.
I'm still sticking with he should have not had it on tap as long as he did, because it smelled like ass. I mean, she literally had to put it at the other end of the table, and I could still freaking smell it.
It was potent.
Yeah, but I did. Granted, that was the weekend I pulled it. The weekend you're describing.
Yeah, probably because I freaking flipped out about it. You need to listen to me.
But you know what's crazy? Some people were nuts about it, even at that stage.
Yeah.
And they were like asking for it like over and over. And I'm like, you just must like that?
Yep.
You know?
You could have done an off-flavor training.
Yeah, isovaleric acid, because that's all it was. But so, I mean, the genesis of the idea was there. Like, I was hoping that it was a little more delicate of a transition to probably we should put this in barrels instead of we're scaring the customers. Right? So I was the plan had formulated the day after I brewed the beer. So admittedly, when we first brewed the beer, I had done a sour mash that just like went a little wacky. Like we didn't get enough CO2 into it, so the isovaleric, which needs oxygen, formed. So we weren't intending for this to be a barrel-aged beer. But once I noticed the isovaleric, I got really excited because I was like, sweet, I've been looking to do this project for a while, but nobody's going to make an isovaleric beer to do this, right? So I was just like waiting for this to happen. And, well, not like intentionally, but I knew that this is the thing I wanted to do when something went wrong, right? And so once it finally happened, I was like, sweet. I wasn't upset. I wasn't going to dump it. I was going to make it do its thing. And what I was hoping, because especially when you taste the wort when it's still sweet, it's not offensive at all. Like, you just get the hints of it, but it's like subtle blue cheese, which is nice in like that kind of context. It only really comes out once it ferments. And then it only comes out further as the beer ages and conditions and all those kind of things. So I was hoping that the transition would be more pleasant and subtle. It was not. But the final product worked just as well. And really happy because they don't always go the way I think they're going to go. We had a couple barrels of vinegar that we just had to dump recently. Off another experiment that I tried that did not go the way that I wanted it to go.
You know what's really cool, though? How often do you get to taste that process, though? I mean, I don't ever remember... I don't think I've ever tasted a beer that started like that and ended like this. Like, it really made... Like, I've studied that that's what happens with, you know... But to actually taste it and you know, because I was always taught that you should know your beer from the whole process. Like, you should be tasting the wort and, you know, throughout fermentation, you should know your beer from start to finish. And you don't often get that experience with a sour beer, especially as a consumer. You know, I mean, you probably taste it from the barrel pretty frequently.
Yeah,
but
well, actually, admittedly, we really don't. Like, you don't want to disturb those pellicles, right? Like, I get a little anxious doing it. That beer is going to be fine because we're going to, hopefully, actually, because it's pretty summery now, we'll probably tap it relatively soon. Yeah. And I really like that culture, and that culture will lend itself to, honestly, probably some store-bought in there. It might be really cool. But, so we're, you know, it's going to be an easy beer to package off, but you don't want to mess with the barrel. So the problem with barrel beers is kind of a paradox, is like you have to taste it and you have to learn about it to get good at it, but in order for it to be good, aka for you to be good at it, you can't really mess with it too much or taste it too much. So it's this weird that's why working at Church Brew Works was great, because it was the most permissive work environment I ever was in to like just screw up and make mistakes, and like doesn't really matter if we dump this beer. And it was my first job. So that's why it was so great to work there, because I got to start their sour beer program and they didn't care if I screwed it up or not. So I got to really dig into weird shit like this. And so it got to a point where every beer that had an off flavor, they'd be like, Ethan, can you save this? You know, most of the time the answer was no.
So if people want to find out more about everything happening in the world of Stickman, so it's stickmanbrews.com? Is that what it is?
Stickman Brews.
Not Stickman Brewing. Stickman, singular man.
And also, we're pretty active on Facebook as far as we post all of our events, all of our food trucks, music.
Cool.
Do you know how to use Twitter?
Yeah.
We don't use Twitter at all.
Twitter kind of scares me a little bit. So, Ethan,
What is it
do
with
Twitter, right?
breweries?
We don't
Breweries
use
and
Instagram.
Twitter.
I do a lot of I post a lot of pictures of Brendan, my assistant brewer, my muse. I post a lot of pictures
It's a
of
whole
him.
other level here. Your muse.
Wow.
We've been drinking a little. I post a lot of pictures of Brendan on Instagram. We haven't tweeted in honestly a year.
Okay. Are you at Stickman Brews?
Yeah.
Everything
Instagram?
is Stickman Brews. Yeah.
All right.
That makes sense. Cool. And
Makes it easy.
food trucks are pretty much every week, is it?
Every Friday, Saturday, and sometimes Sunday too.
Cool. So most of the weekend. Very cool. And
we always keep our Facebook up to date of
Nice.
who the food truck will be.
and shout out again to, what was it, Vita?
Vita Eats.
Vita
Yeah.
Eats. Shout out again to them.
And they have a restaurant in Havertown as well as the food truck.
Very cool. The tacos and nachos were amazing, and the tots were awesome too. So, cool.
And when you come here, order something besides an IPA.
Yes.
Please.
We'd be happy to help guide you.
Or
Order
look
the
for,
black
look for
lager.
Ethan specifically and tell him you want Northeast.
You come
IPA.
come in and say the Beer Buster sent me, and they will give you the next Steph I told you so beer.
Of course. Well, guys, thank you for having us out here.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you guys
It's-
so much for coming.
It was a lot of fun, and I knew it would be, and I look forward to coming back and see what you guys have again in the future, and of course for the release of I Told You So, Steph. Can't wait.
Yeah, it better be before I leave for my trip, though.
When do you leave for your trip?
We need to look at our calendars. The last Wednesday in June.
Last Wednesday in June. They'd probably work it out before then. We're going to run out of taproom beer at the rate that we're going right now. So.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
come in and drink the beer, then they can tap us sooner.
Well, definitely do that. I, of course, want to thank Audible again for their continuing support. audibletrial.com/beerbusters. You know it by now. You love it. Go get your free 30-day trial of your own Audible account where you get to download, listen to, and keep your own audiobook. It's in the cloud. You cannot get rid of that shit. It will be there forever, as many times as you want to go back and listen to it.
Until the internet dies.
Until the internet dies, which, who knows, maybe sooner rather than later. But let's not get political. audibletrial.com/beerbusters.
And don't forget to don't forget to go to patreon.com/beerbusters, where you can learn to say words properly. Support the podcast. Give us money because we love you and hear bonus content.
Yes. Don't forget the bonus.
patreon.com/beerbusters.
It's been a long night, Wayne, hasn't it?
Getting tired.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, this brings us to the end of another episode of Beer Busters. And it really has been a lot of fun. Anybody out there who has not been to Stickman yet, you are doing it wrong. You need to come in here. You need to, like Wayne said, order something other than an IPA. Get something outside your comfort zone, and you will be pleasantly surprised. But really, guys, thank you again for having us out here.
Thank you.
It's been a lot of fun.
Our pleasure.
And don't forget to bring the Oreos when you come out here, too. That needs to happen.
Yes.
We'll bring the Oreos next time.
There we go.
I'll get
It's
working
a
on
Have an
deal.
that.
Oreo buffet.
Ooh, there we go. Well, I am Dan Baker, joined as usual by my co-host and brewologist,
Steph Huffner.
and, of course, the demented and fermented
Wayne Baker.
Remember, no squids were harmed in the making of this particular episode. We'll see you next time.
Just a tinge of balls.